Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show. Today we're going to be talking about IDP linebackers, top 24 repeaters, and top 24 non-repeaters. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Well, hello everyone. I am your host, Ricky Rodrigue. You can find me at RickyRod66 on X. And joining me is Sean Teague, and you can find Sean at Sean8386 on X as well. We are thrilled to be with you today to talk about IDP linebackers, and in particular, those that are going to rise to the top 24 and those that are going to fall out of the top 24. Now, when we talk about linebackers, we're going to be talking about your inside linebackers, your Mikes, type of linebackers. We're doing true position, which is kind of the new way of most of the IDP leagues are going. So you won't hear us talking about outside linebacker edge types. That was talked about on our show last week. So if you missed it, go to the same YouTube channel, IDP Plus channel, and catch that show or the previous interior defensive lineman / defensive tackles to get caught up on that one as well. We're talking about the top 24 risers and fallers for those positions as well. So definitely go back and check that out. So, Sean, you doing well today, bud?
I'm doing fantastic. It's Friday.
That's right. And if people didn't put together, the 6-6 in Ricky's 6-6 is June 6th, which is his birthday. So yes, it is my birthday. And I love you guys so much, guys and gals, so much that we're recording on my birthday. How you like that? All righty. Presents are more than welcome as a side note. Okay, good presents, I might add. All right, so I've just brought up onto the screen here the repeaters by position. This is a study done over approximately 10 years. And as you can see, on average, over the last 10 years, of the top 12 scoring linebackers from the previous year, only 4 repeated. Similarly, of the top 24 linebackers from last year, only 11 repeated. And as you can see, those numbers are very close, are spot on to what we talked about with edge defensive ends and outside linebackers. Now, there's some rounding in these numbers. I just kept it simple and rounded the numbers. But as you can see, more than 50% of the linebackers that finish in the top 24 won't be there this coming year. And that's what we're here to help you with, to get you to think about differently. Don't just assume someone who was great last year is going to be great this coming year. Now, Sean, I know you've been doing it for each of our shows, and you've kind of been going through and looking at the Kings Classic scoring system, which is what we use for this exercise that we've been doing. I'm going to pull up that linebacker scoring system. It's the one that's boxed in the middle for people to look at as you're talking here. But as you went and looked at the few years that the Kings Classic has been around, what have you learned from the linebacker research, Sean?
Yeah, so last year there was 13 of the top 24 repeated, and the year before that it was actually 15. So a little higher than the 10-year average there, but it's still right there in line with it. Probably one of the most fascinating things I found was just about every, of the 13, so 11 that did not repeat last year or from the previous years. All but 2 were injured for at least 5-6 games, I think was about the minimum. The only 2 that were not were Quincy Williams and someone else. I've got that note somewhere, Ricky.
Someone else. I think he's number 59 on
Patrick Queen.
Patrick Queen.
Yeah, so those were the only 2 that played a full season and did not repeat. And Quincy Williams just missed this list. So he was actually 24 or 25. So yeah, all the others were injuries. So it's crazy. This has been the most injury dependent list compared to the others.
compared to the two shows that we've done so far with the interior defensive lineman as well as the edge. So very interesting. So when we think about it, Sean, um, you got these Mike linebackers / inside linebackers trying to fill the holes, fill the gaps, constant pounding, you know, with running and impact and so forth. Is that your take on why these linebackers, maybe there's a higher injury rate that you've seen with the linebackers, or you think it's just something else?
I think so. These guys are in the middle of the field where safeties, corners, they can see more of what's coming their way. As far as offensive linemen, probably causing I don't know how many of these injuries. Just getting blindsided or getting ran over by an offensive lineman. And so, the defensive backs, they get to see those guys coming, so they're not really in that fire zone, and the defensive linemen are already in the way. So I would say that's a lot of it. They don't see all these blockers coming, and then just the physicality of a lot of these guys being run stuffers, pounding, pounding, pounding. So many times a game. Yeah, it takes a toll on a body for sure.
Yeah, and so a lot of these linebackers, we'll say 230 to 245 probably pound wise. And these days, offensive linemen are mostly 290 to 320. And so if they get past that first line of defensive line when they're coming at them, or some of these blindside blocks and chips coming from tight ends and so forth, all of that adds up over a period of time on their body. So very interesting. And once again, supports the reason of why we're going through these shows, because whether it be injuries, whether it be bad play, the repeat rates of the top 24 changes. And that's what we're here to talk about. And I've been quoting it every show. I'm going to quote it again. The great Bob Harris, the football diehard, always talks about the fact we're trying to draft this year's best team, not last year's best team. So we want to talk about what we think is going to happen in 2025. So thank you, Sean, for doing that research. And just the last thing I'll mention about the Kings Classic scoring before we move on and start looking at who was in the top 24 linebackers last year in the Kings Classic scoring, is a reminder that the Kings Classic scoring tries to get in the top 100 scorers for that league about 50-50 in terms of offense and IDP. So it's part of the reason we use this scoring system as part of this analysis. Okay, so let's look at the top 24 from last year. Some very interesting names on this, and we previewed it at the end of last show. And when we first looked at it, we both felt like there's a bunch of names that'll come off pretty darn quickly. And as we got into it, Sean, as you was preparing your list, which we do independently, and then we compare notes afterwards. But Sean, when you started getting into removing the 13 of the 24 on this list, how was it? Was it easier than the edge? Because I know the edge was really tough last week.
Yeah, so looking at the list, I'm like, man, this is going to be a piece of cake. I can knock these off. And, the first, 10 or so wasn't a problem. When it came down to really split hairs and crunch the numbers on these other guys, I spent way too much time on it, if I'm going to be honest. I really had to dig deep on some of these and then just kind of go with my gut a bit here as well. This has been the most difficult for sure, getting down to that final 11. It hurt my brain. I lost valuable family time, I think, during this. Well, how'd it
Sean,
go
we
for
don't want you
you?
hurting your
Like I
brain
said,
too much, man. We need your IDP expertise.
yeah.
You can't hurt your brain too much, man.
I don't know if I got smarter or not. Well, fingers crossed, though.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's move on to the next slide and let's show the audience. And we'll be talking, for those that might be listening on Spotify, we'll talk about a lot of the names that came off the list. And so when we put our list together, 13 names needed to come off. We both picked 12 of the 13 identically. There was only one name where we had a difference in terms of which one we were taking off as the 13th one. So as much as Sean's brain and head was hurting as he was going through the exercise, it was interesting that separately when we came together, the following names came off the list for those that are only listening or might be on Spotify: N'Kobe Dean, Levante David, Jermaine Pratt, Eric Kendricks, Frankie Louvu, Nick Bolton, Bobby Wagner, EJ Speed, Blake Cashman, Kaiser White, Demario Davis, and Jack Campbell. My 13th one that I pulled off the list, who finished 5th last year in the scoring system, was Robert Spillane, while Sean pulled off Christian Roseboom. So we're going to start talking about a few of these folks here and let you know some of our opinions. And one of the ones we're going to start with, and I'm going to ask Sean to talk a little bit about, is someone who just got a pretty big contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe it was 3 years, $45 million, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong, but it was a big number that they paid to keep him, and it was driven by the Zach Bond contract, which I believe was 3 years and $51 million to stay in Philadelphia. But Nick Bolton, we both had him on the list. Sean, why don't you talk about your rationale for taking him off the list?
Yeah, so looking at his history, he's only had the one big year where he had 180 tackles. His normal season seems to be just over 100 tackles, a couple sacks, maybe an interception or two. Solid season, but he's just not giving us those big numbers. He has come nowhere close to that peak. And since we had a little extra time this week, I actually did some digging on Steve Spagnuolo, going back to his years as a defensive coordinator, and this is the 2007 to 8 Giants, a year with the Saints in 2012, back with the Giants from 15 to 17, and then from 19 to present day with the Chiefs. His linebackers don't produce. Outside of that 180 tackle season by Nick Bolton, the next highest was 123 tackles by Curtis Lofton, who only threw in an extra sack with that. So if you look back at the teams that he produces, it's heavy on the defensive line and very versatile defensive backs. Strahan, Umanura Tuck, Cam Jordan, Pierre Paul, Olivier Vernon, just fantastic edge rushers. Chris Jones now, Frank Clark a few years ago. And then it's Tyrann Mathieu, Landon Collins, Malcolm Jenkins, L'Jarius Sneed. So the defensive line is doing a lot of the work. The corners are coming off with blitzes. The safeties are playing up in the box, getting a lot of tackles too. And so the linebackers themselves are just not getting the plays. They're not getting the ball to come their way. So I found that really fascinating, and that's good enough for me not to put Bolton on this list.
Well, that is some awesome research and all that you found there on related to Spags and his defense and so forth, and specifically to Bolton. And Bolton, unfortunately, he still continues to get drafted much higher than this, oftentimes in a lot of the IDP leagues and so forth. But
Sure.
yet, he's just not producing like it. And so Nick Bolton, I agree with you, needs to come off this list. And he also has been dinged up a little bit more the last couple of years as well. So, and because he is on the smaller side.
Yeah, had he went in free agency to another team, he would be way higher on this list. He would definitely be staying on this list if he'd went to, say, the Raiders or the Rams, who I think were probably two of the most appealing linebacker positions that had openings for free agency. Him being re-signed just kind of sealed his fate for me for the next while, to not be a top guy. But let's get a guy over to you, somebody who has been a top dog for a long, long time, Mr. Bobby Wagner.
Bobby Wagner. So I pulled him off the list for a couple of reasons. And for those that have been listening to my shows, this whole age thing is coming to play in some of my thought processes y'all might have heard about. If not, go back and listen to other shows. You'll hear it quite a bit. But so Bobby Wagner's turning 35. And if you look at his tackles over so you go back to 2022, he had 140 tackles. Well, 2021, he had 170 tackles. 2022, 140. 2023, back a peak to 183. And then this past year, down 132. So 2 of the last 3 years below 140, getting up there in age. I think he's valued just as much for his leadership, his knowledge of the defense and being able to line up people versus how efficient and how effective he was earlier in his career. So I think that's why he's there, and I think he's there to help groom probably Jordan McGee, hopefully, or Kane Madrano, the draft pick this year, who will eventually replace him. But at 35 for an inside linebacker, and granted, he's put on some weight, and part of the reason some of his tackle numbers are down is he is a lot more heavier than he was previously in his lifetime. So he's listed at 240. He's bigger than 240, folks, if you look at him on the screen. So I just don't see Wagner, given his age, that drop off in production down about 50 tackles year over year. I just don't see him as being one of these repeaters in the top 24. And as it is, he was number 17 this past year.
Yeah, his decline in coverage, especially with young, faster guys out there on the field, they can outrun him now. So he's not getting all those tackles either. And not playing in Seattle makes a difference. That was a bit of a cheat code. If you took Seattle or Cincinnati, they were known for giving out more tackles and assisted tackles with their home scoring stats there, stat crew. So, yeah, I think that's hurt him a little over the years too. But yeah, getting older, getting slower, offenses are younger and faster. I hate to see him. I know his time's coming. We're not going to see him much longer, and I'm going to miss him.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great player, great leader, all those kinds of things. But the productivity expected to take another hit down from those 130 tackles that we saw this past year. All righty. So I'm going to throw it back over to you and Jack Campbell, number 23. Now, I've seen some IDP dynasty lists that have Jack Campbell among the top 5 from a linebacker perspective. But here we are talking about Jack Campbell not even finishing in the top 24 this coming year. So, Sean, why don't you share some thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm not ready to crown him just yet. I've only seen one full season of him there at the helm, and he's still second fiddle to Alex Anzalone. And with all the other injuries at linebacker there, he was allowed to play that full season and to get the extra snaps, where I'm pretty sure we were going to see some more rotation last year had it not been so many injuries. He also lost his defensive coordinator that he's had since he's come in the league. I'm expecting this team to look a little different, if not start to regress. I'm not real crazy about the line in front of him. I think they could have done better upgrading that position. Brian Branch is the real focal point here, too. I see him still in tackles. It feels more like a gut call to me. I'm just not seeing. Now, he had games where he looked great, or I'll say put up stats for us, but I haven't seen it consistently enough yet. I just don't trust this team on defense right now, and I'm not ready to crown him as the next best thing just yet.
So what's interesting is Kelvin Shepard, who was a linebackers coach last year, is now the defensive coordinator. So to your point, a new defensive coordinator. But one of the reasons Campbell kept both Shepard promoted Shepard to the DC and also Martin on offense as well was he wanted to keep continuity and do things similarly. While your linebacker coach is now the DC, if they're doing things similarly, what they've been doing previous to all the injuries they had at linebacker last year was some heavy duty rotation. Derek Barnes is coming back from injury. Alex Anzalone is coming back from injury, although I know he's holding out right now for a contract thing, but he'll be there at some point, even though he's a little bit older as well. Malcolm Rodriguez, it was talked about this week that he'll be back in November timeframe. So if you believe that they're going to continue what they've done in the past, which linebacker coach become defensive coordinator would imply that they would, adding in more rotation of snaps, lower snap count as well, is the other reason that I took him off the list. So I was right there with you.
Yeah, we're just going to have to see more of it. One good season is enough for us to really just run with this. A lot of questions here. Another guy with a very questionable future, Mr. Nakobe Dean. We know he got injured late last year, and judging by offseason reports and whatnot, I believe this injury was worse than we all anticipated. And then they went and drafted Chad Campbell in the first round. So it's not looking good for him this year. Got anything else to add?
Right. This is not a dynasty rating, so this is for this coming year for 2025. And it's kind of funny. There's been mixed reports on his recovery, and there's always the optimistic one. Wow, he's got a chance to be ready for week one. Well, you know what? I got a chance to be ready for week one, Sean, but that's probably not going to happen.
Ricky feeling lean and mean in his old age. Turn him loose, guys.
Exactly. Well, I'm not quite in that. I'm not even close to that 230 to 245-pound range. I'm just not there. I'm not even in the free safety range. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. But it's the injury that has me taking him off the list. And even with the Jihad Campbell drafting and so forth, because the Eagles always draft. Well, I shouldn't say always, but somehow these great players fall into their laps, and Jihad Campbell kept on falling. Of course, he's coming back. He's dealing with a shoulder injury himself as well. But in the original OTAs that they had, they actually had Campbell, even though he wasn't practicing, sitting in with the this inside linebacker group. So that leads me to believe that Dean probably won't be ready for the start of the year, whereas Campbell will. So I think it's also bad news for Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who many thought might slip into that role, as Oren Burks also left in free agency going to Cincinnati. So sorry for that tangent for a second, folks, but I just thought I'd mention that. But that injury, I expect him to miss probably about 8 games, half the season is my guess. Jihad Campbell was healthy by the start of training camp. He moves into that role. Nakobe Dean, when he does come back, there's probably some rotation stuff going to ease him back in as well, along with Campbell. And then eventually, as the year progresses, we get towards the end of the year, Dean's probably playing 100% of the snaps, and you see Campbell playing more on the edge to try and get more juice and more pass rush. I'm not sure if everybody agrees with that, but regardless, what it does say is Nakobe Dean won't be playing 100% of the snaps week one. Won't be probably playing 100% of the snaps roughly till week 10, week 12, something along those lines. That's not enough to get you into the top 24. He might be a steal and might help you win a championship late in the year, but in terms of full year, he's not going to help you get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I actually think we're going to see a Trotter Campbell rotation to start this off with, and then maybe instances where they're both on the field, Trotter next to Bond, and then Campbell on the edge a little bit, and then like I said, when Dean comes back, then we'll start seeing a rotation there again. It's Zach Bond out of this group, and that is it. We're not trusting any of these, but do keep an eye on the waivers this year, because all these guys should not be on a team and could probably help you on any given week once we get all this figured out once the season starts. But I'm with you.
Good call out. All right, so let's put it back to you. So let's talk about each of the ones that you and I differed on, which was just one. And Christian Roseboom, you took him off the list. So talk to me about Christian Roseboom, why you took him off.
Yeah,
and I might counterpoint that one, and just like you counterpoint my Spillane in a minute.
He was in a sweet spot there in LA behind a very young and very aggressive defensive line. Fantastic spot for a linebacker, and it just felt like he didn't really wow me ever. I felt like there was a lot of points left on the field after each game that he could have racked up. Now he's going to a new team. The Panthers, they only really deploy one full-time linebacker. The next guy could range anywhere from 68% to 90%. That's a lot of fluctuation from week to week. He is not going to be that top guy. That spot belongs to Josie Jewell. So without I know Jewell's probably going to get hurt. So he is probably going to get a few games to help boost him up, but I don't think it'll be enough to counterpoint the lack of production on the other weeks. He's just not a guy I'm chasing after right now.
So who do you think is the number 2 linebacker in Carolina? Do you think it's Trevin Wallace, or do you think it is Christian Roseboom?
I think he's the number 2, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see some rotation with Wallace already being in that spot last year, I think they're going to want to see what they got out of him as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little rotation out of these guys.
That's very interesting. And I disagree with you on that. So I think the Panthers signed Roseboom to be their number 2 linebacker. Trevin Wallace was very inefficient from a tackle per snap perspective.
Yeah.
And I do think that Josie Jewell will actually and finally maybe play almost a full season. My gut, that's just a gut call, and we'll talk about that when we get into the risers, and we'll have a little debate about that, I'm sure, as well. But so I see Roseboom playing that number 2 linebacker role, playing 95% of the snaps in that role. If Jewell does get hurt, which I don't think he will, I think this is the year he doesn't get hurt, but if he does, Roseboom moves into that number 1 slot, Wallace moves into the number 2. I just think Roseboom's going to play over 90% of the snaps this year. And while the Carolina Panthers front 4 should be improved from a run stopping perspective, particularly with Derek Brown coming back, still don't feel great about their pass rushing capability, particularly when they're relying on 2 Vikings cast-offs and then 2 rookies behind them. So I just think Carolina will still be behind in a lot of games. I still think that there'll be a lot of running against Carolina. I think there'll be a lot of times that their defense is on the field, and I think Roseboom racks up this stats. So that's why I left him on.
I'm a little different there. I actually think Carolina does pretty decent this year and will be on the field a little less. And man, looking at last year, I don't recall seeing the second linebacker getting that many snaps, that higher percentage each week. I want to say it was 80s, lower 80s, but we should have a tool for that, Ricky. Do we have?
We do have a tool for that, and we have a snap count tool that shows week by week the snaps that each player plays, sorted by position, and then the percentage of the snaps that they played that particular week. So I happen to be looking at that separately right now, and I see that, of course, Josie Jewell was out. He got hurt in week 4. So week 5, 6, and 7, he missed. And during those weeks, Wallace played 100% of the snaps. When Jewell came back in weeks 8 and 9, Jewell played 100% of the snaps both weeks. Wallace played 89 and 87. So he did dip down a little bit from there, which is a fair point that you're calling out. But I just think Wallace just wasn't as good as I think Roseboom is, and that's part of the difference. Not that I think Roseboom is the best thing since sliced bread, but I just think Roseboom's a higher caliber player, and that's where he dropped off to that 60-70% range. I still think Roseboom will stay in the high 80s, low 90s kind of thing. So
Yeah.
That's Ricky's narrative. Obviously, Sean has a different narrative, but that's why we like to have these discussions, and we're going through this exercise. Sorry, Sean, I cut you off.
Well, yeah, to your point, even there at the end of the year, once Jewell was out again and they were rotating Wallace, that entire linebacker core was a mess trying to figure out each week. I think we had 2 or 3 other
Chandler
guys.
Wooten and Jacoby Weinman and
Cherilus or
Claude
something.
and Cherilus,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, it was bad. So I think they at least have a little bit more depth that they can depend on should Jewell get hurt again, which I'm betting he doesn't for once.
That's a risky bet. I don't know if I would take that. The guy I would bet on is the guy you took off the list here, Mr. Robert Spillane. Tell me why.
That's a great point. And the last 2 years, 2023, 148 combined tackles for Spillane. 2024, 158 combined tackles. He threw in a couple of sacks on top of that last year, 3.5 the year before. He's going on 30, which isn't that exorbitant compared to Wagner's 35. So what is it, Ricky? What it is that he's changing teams. He's changing systems. He's going from a 4-3 with the Raiders to this quasi 4-3-3-4 with New England. Also with Spillane's struggles in pass coverage and Frabl's history coming under the Belichick tree. I'm worried about Spillane not getting the 99% or the 100% snaps he typically gets. Could see a rotation with Jack Gibbons a little bit, with Christian Ellis. Marte Mapu, the safety, is getting practice in the OTAs at linebacker. He was this combination linebacker safety coming out. When I heard that in particular, that made me even more nervous because of Mapu's speed and better ability in coverage, which is one of the reasons they also like Christian Ellis, as a side note, because of his coverage ability, actually more than his run stuffing capabilities. It's just sending me some signals that I'm worried about Spillane. And if he doesn't get that 100% of the snaps, I'm worried that he will not stay in the top 24. Counterpoint, Sean.
I am way less worried. So much so that I think he's a top 5 linebacker this year. And that's, of course, that's based off his play once he left Pittsburgh, which Pittsburgh is notorious for not playing their starters that full 100% all the time. And just the way their defense is set up, they don't produce top 24 guys every year at linebacker. They just don't. But Spillane, you look at his numbers last 2 years, and everybody touts Zach Bond as being, kind of the MVP this year. Spillane's numbers were right there with him both years. And watching Vrabel coach here in Tennessee, he sets his linebackers up for success each week, and he's got a arguably better defensive tackle group in front of him, better line around him to an extent. Nobody there is a Max Crosby, of course, but I'd say Keon White, Christian Barmore, they're better than Adam Butler for sure. So, and it's a division with the Jets and the Dolphins. There's going to be plenty of tackle opportunities there for those 4 games anyway. Throw in the Bills with Josh Allen, that 3-headed running back rotation there. They actually have a really good schedule for linebackers this year. I think he's going to do just fine. I'm not scared of the system change at all. Marte Mapu, I think we're going to question this guy his entire career. We're probably never going to see it bloom into what we're all hoping. Maybe get some slot play or something, but it feels like they're just going to waste this guy trying to figure out what to do with him while the years go on without him. So he doesn't really concern me. Ellis, I think, is a great compliment to Spillane. Just like I thought Diablo kind of filled in as the compliment to him in Vegas there. So I see this being a really good tandem. Actually, I could see Ellis being a sneaky pick later in your drafts, possibly a waiver ad as far as that goes too. But yeah, obviously I trust Spillane way more than Ricky does.
Yep. So let me ask you this. Okay, let's Ellis, Jack Gibbons, or Tavai. And I know Tavai's hurt, but he's supposed to be back for it's
Tavai doesn't scare me at all. He's just a guy.
You think Ellis is the starter next to Spillane, or you?
I do. I think it's Ellis. Like I say, I think his skill set complements Spillane's a lot better. Where Tavai is a less impressive Christian Rosenboom.
Okay. Before we leave this page, I'm going to ask you one more question here.
All right.
We took off EJ Speed. Both of us did, as he left the Colts and signed with Houston. Rank the order that these 4 folks are going to finish in tackles for the Texans at the end of the 2025 season.
Oh, my gosh.
Azeez Al-Shaair, Christian Harris, Henry To'oTo'o, or I like to call him Toto, and EJ Speed. Rank them 1 to 4 from a tackles perspective.
I think Al-Shaair is your top guy. I think he's the only one I would trust in drafting. And then I think it's an absolute mess. EJ Speed is not the guy that he thinks he is, and that showed by him signing for as little as he did with Houston. Kind of showed how the rest of the league viewed him as well. He's just not that guy. I think To'oTo'o is the second guy. Then I think probably Speed, then Harris.
So Harris seemed to feel like he was D'Amico's boy, and then the injuries he
Can't
basically
can't stay
missed
on the
missed all of
field.
last year. He couldn't stay exactly right. So that's interesting. I might have Harris if Harris is healthy in training camp. I might have Harris as number 2 over both of those other guys.
Yeah, and I would get, but it's a big question. We've seen what a mess this unit was last year. The only thing that hurt Alshire was, well, not the only thing, but uh, the boneheaded plays, the dirty hits, the suspensions. That cost him some games, and then he had some injuries on top of that. So we could realistically see all 4 of these guys not be worth drafting at all.
We hate tandem running back backfields. We hate 3-headed monsters. This one could be a 4-headed monster. So just as people are thinking about their drafts and so forth this year, be
Yeah.
careful of those Texans outside of Alshire. I don't disagree with you.
And
Now,
honestly, I'm probably avoiding the situation entirely. I might take Alshire if he slides far enough for me to feel okay with him as an LB 3 or 4. I doubt he slides that far, but I'm staying away from the entire situation.
all right. And of course, Jermaine Pratt finished number 10 in this scoring system, but the rumor is they're going to release him or trade him, but they haven't done it yet. My gut says it's going to happen at some point when they have some injury and they need to go to free agency to find someone. Either that or they're just holding out until Lou Amarumo, or however you say his name, the coach coordinator, forced the coach to potentially make a trade for him, which we hope they don't do, because that actually leads us to our next group, which is it's time to reveal who we think are going to be moving into the top 24 to replace these ones that we took out. But before we do, go to the Fast Draft app and check it out, folks. You can get up to a $50 match with the code PLUS, PLUS. A lot of fun. It is a fast draft. For those of you that are watching this, probably love IDP. There's an IDP fast draft as part of this. Great opportunity to have some fun and get some free money. Once again, deposit $50, get $50. Deposit 25, you get 25. Use the code word PLUS. With that, let's do the reveal. And it is now on the screen. And I forgot to count this ahead of time, so I'm going to do this live on the show. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 that you and I agreed upon of the that would move into the top 24, meaning replacing the other 13 we took out, and we had 6 that were different. So while we matched on who was coming out for the most part, only about a 50% match on those that are going in. So we're going to talk about several of these folks here. And the first one that we both had on the list, which, before I even started looking at depth charts and so forth, I was like, Edgerrin Cooper. Boom, typed him in. You did as well. Edgerrin Cooper, where's he going to finish this year, Sean?
Oh, he's going to finish top 12.
Oh, I got him top 6.
Well, just in case there's an injury or two in there, I like to give myself some room. No, I could see it. I really could. He looked great last year when he finally got in there. Got the full set of snaps, even in some spare rotational situations. He showed really good numbers, really good pass rushing skills. That's I was really impressed there. It's not always easy for a rookie to come in and get a linebacker spot and rush the pass as well. I believe he was one of the top 10 maybe in PFF. If you go by, I think, total overall linebacker play, he was like number 10. He looks the part. He looked like the veteran out there, where Quay Walker looked more of the immature guy out there, which has been a bit of his problem. Just attitude, some on-field issues, maybe some off-field issues. It kind of feels like Green Bay's pushing him out the door, maybe giving up on him a little bit, but not saying it publicly. Edgerrin Cooper looks like he's going to be the full-time starter this year. I know they're re-signed Isaiah McDuffie. I don't see that being a rotation this year. I see McDuffie either chewing into Quay Walker's playtime or the eventual replacement for him next year. But yeah, Cooper looked fantastic.
Yeah, he really did, and his tackle efficiency was through the roof
Yeah.
in terms of his tackles per snap. Made plenty of big plays as well. Uh, he was just a monster all over the place. The only reason he didn't start the year was he was still kind of learning the system and the defense, and they trusted McDuffie. But as the year went on, as he got more and more comfortable, and his playmaking ability continued to show, they had no choice but then to put him in over McDuffie. And so I'm expecting, 95 to 100% of the snaps, and just a big, fantastic year. So we are 100% aligned on Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah,
By the way,
absolutely.
since you brought up Quay Walker, I have him on my list. I know you didn't, but I think as he goes into year 5, he goes into year 4, right? They
Yeah.
didn't pick up his option for the 5th year.
Right.
I think that's a little bit of a kick in the butt to him to say, better get focused, dude, or things aren't going to work out. So I think that little extra nudge will help him get a little bit more focus as he's playing for that contract. And we've talked about that in the past couple of shows, a little bit about contracts. And I think that bumps in the top 24, not necessarily into the top 12 or anything, but I could think Quay Walker ends up in the top 24.
Yeah, and I had a similar mindset looking at whether to add him or not. Contract year, that's a boost right there. It's just something about the way he plays and how it feels like Green Bay's maybe had enough of him. They're still going to play him out and give him a shot, and I just think Edgerrin Cooper overshadows him just that bad this year that even with a contract year, he's not going to be able to pull off a massive contract with a new team next year.
All right.
We're
So
expecting huge things here for Cooper this year.
we are. And I went after him aggressively in one of my favorite leagues here, and I got him. I got him in a trade, so I was thrilled to have him as an anchor in my dynasty linebacker team for the future here.
Yeah, he's going to be a target of mine as well this year. And a guy I am looking at is somebody who is probably going to be more of a sleeper this year, kind of a forgotten player, especially after being traded a few times last year, skipping teams, Mr. Tyrell Dodson.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't have him on your list, though, by the way. But, so Tyrell Dodson's undrafted free agent out of Texas A&M, the hated Texas A&M. Sorry if there's any Aggies listening here, but as an LSU
Unbiased
guy,
opinions.
yeah,
Unbiased
totally
opinions.
unbiased, exactly right. But, he played 17 games last year. He started 12. Starting linebacker for Seattle. They go to bye week and they cut him. Okay. Am I saying that Tyrell Dodson belongs in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely not. But is there something to be said that if you have a linebacker who's going to get probably 95% of the snaps and can be productive in those snaps, even if it's maybe a couple yards further downfield than the team would like, that's your Tyrell Dodson, folks. And guess who's been wearing the green dot in OTAs? It ain't David Long. He's not there anymore. And it's not
It's
Duke
not.
Riley. He's
It's
not there
not
anymore.
Jordan Brooks.
It's not Jordan Brooks either. It is Tyrell
What?
Dodson has been wearing the green dot here in the OTAs. So, and then what was interesting about Dodson this past year is when he went to Miami, he actually had 3 interceptions, which interceptions are not highly repeatable. But one of the things that he has done well, maybe he hasn't been the rock of Bobby Wagner was in his prime in terms of stopping the run, but he's okay against the run. But also his pass defense has been pretty good, which should keep him on the field as well.
Yeah,
Dodson had over 100 tackles last year combined between the two teams in those 17 games.
which is crazy to get bounced around that much.
Exactly. So could this be a 1-year thing? And could we be talking next year the Dolphins on a different free agent or draft someone and Dodson is gone? Yep. But for 2025, as things stand, love Dodson right now into the top 24.
Yeah, he was on my list, and I swapped him out for a guy we're going to talk about here later on. And the reason at that point that he wasn't wearing the green dot in practice, they said that he was going to have to fight for it. And I looked at the guys he had to fight against, and I was like, well, he's probably going to win that. And then this other guy came up. We'll get to it in a little while later, was wearing a green dot, and I got super excited and swapped the
Well,
two.
well, let's go there and talk about. I believe you're talking about Devin White.
No.
You're talking
But
about Jack Sanborn.
I'm talking about Jack Sanborn. The fever is back. I'm excited for him. And then I've found out that Kenneth Murray is also wearing the green dot. So we both got, or I have Sanborn on the list. You have Murray on here. I
That
believe we both like the spot.
that is correct. So that Mike position in Dallas, it's who do you believe is going to end up taking that role? Do you believe Eberflus, who came over from the Bears, brought Sanborn with him? Is Sanborn going to take over that Mike position, wear the green dot, and get those 100% of the snaps? Or is it going to be Kenneth Murray, who they traded for, the former number one pick, who's not necessarily a great player? Not that
Right.
Sanborn's not necessarily a stud either. Was Sanborn an undrafted free agent, or was he a late round pick?
I think he was undrafted.
Yeah, I think he was a UDFA. Now he does know the system, and he came over cheap. So I actually had, in all transparency, when I first started my list, I had Jack Sanborn there instead of Kenneth Murray. Then I heard that Murray was also wearing the green dot, as Sanborn was in practice as well. So it's clear those two are competing. And I just think that they brought in, the more I thought about that, they brought in Sanborn more to be that Sam number 3 linebacker and the backup to the Mike. But Sanborn can help to educate the players on the Eberflus system. That's why they brought him in, and they could bring him in fairly cheap. But Murray, the former number one pick, is I think who ends up in the spot. So, but there is an argument that it could be Sanborn as well.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm leaning Murray. Sean is leaning Sanborn.
Yeah, with him coming over, already knowing the system, and has been given the chance to wear the green dot. They basically said it's open competition. I think that's all he needs to take over.
Of
Like,
course,
we've seen in Chicago, he was the third guy once they made the big free agency acquisitions, kind of shoved him back down the list. And, his tackle numbers when he is on the field is still pretty solid. He just needs that opportunity. I think this is it, and I think he runs with it.
yep. And so this is going to be really interesting to watch as training camp unfolds. And so what this means from a draft perspective is, unless they come out with a clear pick at who's going to start at the Mike position, got to be very careful on how high you draft either one of these folks in your redraft leagues this year, folks. Just got to be real careful.
Yeah, that's a great point. Don't make these guys your top 12 linebacker pick right away. These are guys we're probably going to see this competition go all the way up till week one. I think it is going to be close. They're going to flip and flop these two back and forth unless an injury occurs. Uh, Whoever wins, still, I wouldn't draft them too high. There is a possibility of discontinuing into the regular season. They may play this out all year, but
And on
plenty.
top of that, if Overshown makes it back in November, December, that could throw a complete new wrench into this.
I think I'm not expecting the Cowboys to be in deep playoff contention at that point, and I think they would be best to not rush him back, not after two major injuries like this. We just seen what happened with Jonathan Brooks in Carolina. They, pretty much cost this kid his career. I hope Dallas makes a very smart decision with Overshown when that time comes.
Interesting. So you don't think the Cowboys will be? I think the Cowboys will be in wild card contention through most of the year. So, wow, we some interesting thoughts on the Cowboys here. And which narrative do you all believe? That's we've given y'all some food for thought, and y'all can run with it from there. Now, a person that we both had on our list was Jalen Carleys for the Indianapolis Colts, and I almost brought up Jermaine Pratt on the previous slide because we both took him off the top 24 list. We should probably talk about Jermaine Pratt as part of the Jalen Carleys discussion, but why don't you talk a little bit about what Carleys is on the list for you, Sean?
Well, first and foremost, the Colts didn't add anyone else. There was no big free agency acquisition. There was no draft pick really at linebacker. So they're pretty much saying he is guaranteed the spot. He plays behind one of the best tandems in the league at defensive tackle. And I expect these guys to be on the field a lot again this year. regardless if it's Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson playing, that opportunities are going to be there. He's got the size or the athleticism, I guess. He is a converted safety, so he does have the speed. So he's going to be used in coverage more. Those are more tackle opportunities, not just the run game. And probably one of the biggest appeals that needs to be considered is on Sleeper and Yahoo. He is still listed as a defensive back. So still a bit of a cheat code.
Absolutely a cheat code there for sure. With the caveat, now, so if you look at Lou Anarumo's defense, who just left Cincinnati, came over to Indianapolis, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, both very productive for IDP, although Wilson got hurt last year and that knocked him out of the top 24, but we both have him coming back in this year as he returns from injury, as you can see on the list for those that are looking. But the risk here is if Jermaine Pratt gets cut or released or potentially traded, does he jump into this role where Carly's is? What are your thoughts there, Sean? Do you think the Colts would go after him if the Bengals release him? And to your point, they haven't brought in anybody else. Almost wondering, are they just waiting for Pratt to get let go?
Yeah, if Pratt does get released, I do think they will scoop him up because he does know the defense, and then Carly's will be shifted down to that third linebacker spot, who still has some production on the team. It's not somebody you could just go out there and trust every week. We would be sitting there waiting for an injury to occur again, which over the last couple of years, I think Franklin's been banged up, and whoever the second guy has been banged up as well, whether it be Speed or Okereke or whoever. So that, these guys do miss time. He would go from a top 24 guy to a possible waiver ad or waiver flyer later in the season if Pratt does come over. If not, I'm firing him up.
Absolutely. So you and I are 100% aligned. As of what we know right now and the depth charts and so forth, there's nobody really to challenge him for that second spot. So, and in that defense of Anarumo, who I'm probably butchering his name, how I'm pronouncing it, Coach Lou.
Yeah, there you go.
I expect it to be extremely productive, just like it was, even though it's a different system, just like Speed was productive in the number 2 linebacker role for the Colts. I think Carly's same thing happens here. I think he makes it into the top 24 with that pass coverage. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a pick or two with that speed that he has. Maybe he gets a blitz sack or an extra sack here or there kind of thing. I just think Carly's has some great potential, assuming they don't pick up anybody else. So we are definitely aligned on that.
Yeah, I'd say we're both on the same page there. One page we are not is Mr. Josie Jewell. I just noticed I don't have him on my list. You have both Panthers on your list.
So, truth be told, Josie Jewell and Cody Bart, two of the more elder statesmen linebackers who are not the most athletic necessarily, although Jewell is probably more athletic than Barton. I was wrestling with those two, and as part of the reason when I was summarizing this on the chart after I got your information so forth, I kind of put them across from each other. Because
whoa. Barton's in Tennessee.
Yeah, but what I meant was that when I put them on the list here, I was debating for, do I put, when I was going through putting my list together, do I put Barton or Jewell into my top 24? I went with Jewell, and my gut was just telling me that this is the freaking year that he's actually going to play more than 12 games and stay healthy and be an efficient player, as I talked about. So I expect him and Roseboom to both have pretty solid years. And so that put him over Barton. If I knew in my crystal ball that Joel was only going to play 12, 13 games or whatever, then I would have put Barton into this slot. But for some reason, my gut is telling me I don't have anything better than that. that Joel will make it through 16 to 17 games and will and barely crack the top 24.
Hey man, sometimes gut feelings are the right ones. It just came down to the injuries for me. That's why I left him off. I know he's going to get injured. Now, if he just misses a game or two, then he's still right here in the top 24. If it's 4 to 6 or more, obviously he's going to be off the list. And I think he just misses the list. That's where I see him falling. And again, it's the injuries. When he's on the field, he's fantastic for IDP. He's always right there. He could be a low end LB1, middling LB1, high end LB2. It's just staying on the field is his only kryptonite.
Yeah. My strategy is if I drafted him at some point, I'm probably looking at him as a linebacker 3 type of thing
Mm-hmm.
with potential upside for linebacker 1, but knowing I got to get a little bit extra depth, knowing with his injury history.
For sure. And to be fair, Cody Barton doesn't really scream, top 24 guy most of the time. He's just kind of a guy. It's more of his situation. If we swap these two on the teams, I'd probably have Jewel higher just because Tennessee is going to be on the field a lot. There's not a great line in front of them. They always seem to have some guy producing, whether it be a 1 week waiver, guy or a starter. So I love the position I love the position and the team more than I love Cody Barton.
That's a very fair point. And Tennessee did use those 2 inside linebackers in the same coaching staff as last year, basically 100% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
unless they got hurt during the game or something along those lines. So Cody Barton certainly has the opportunity. Interestingly enough, as a side note related to Tennessee, when you're sitting in an airplane and you're sitting at the gate and you haven't backed out to take off because there's some sort of mechanical thing they're checking, you have a lot of time to do some research on your phone until they tell you to turn it off and turn it into airplane mode. And so I was trying to do some research on Tennessee linebackers, see what I could find out about who is the leader in the clubhouse for the number 2 spot. And as of now, surprisingly, Otis Reese is not in that hunt, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
It's between Cedric Gray, the former 4th round pick, and then James Williams, the converted safety into a linebacker who was slow as molasses for a safety, but pretty physical, so they could convert him to linebacker. And he was, I believe, a 6th round pick last year. Gray was the year before.
Yeah.
So it looks like those 2 are battling for that spot. So there's not a lot, probably not touching any of those guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some linebacker that gets dropped or cut or somewhere, or maybe a free agent still out there that ends up in a tight jersey and is starting next to Cody Barton as a side note. And that could be and depending on who that is, they could make this top 24 list.
Yeah, there's some decent guys out there that are just
Kaiser White, for example.
Kaiser White, even Eric Kendricks at this point. I think it comes down to, I think Kendricks' problem is probably money. They see his age. Funny enough, Kendricks was on the top 24 list all 3 years of the Kings Classic. The reason we cut him off because he has a new team. Yep. And, his age and all that counts against him, but dude's productive. If he goes to Tennessee, then I'm shooting him way up the list.
Except he won't have Mike Zimmer there. That's the only thing. But yeah,
that's a good point. But again, bad team and a productive spot. That's all you need.
Well, Sean, you put Devin White on the list. Now, as an LSU guy, I've got to compliment you on your great taste. But so, boy, the Raiders linebacker core has gone through quite a change. So why don't you talk about Devin White and why you have him here, not maybe a Landon Roberts even?
Yeah, so I was trying to decide which guy I wanted here because I do think it's a very productive spot. I think it was one of the top 2 most appealing landed spots for any free agent. That being said, I felt Devin White was the more athletic of the 2. I could see him being used in more blitzes and coverages, giving him more tackle opportunities and a little more big play potential there. Where Landon Roberts I see as mostly a thumper and just a run stuffer. Now he probably will take the Mike role, which will put Devin White probably a weak side or something and into the coverage and whatnot. Interesting fact is Patrick Graham is still the defensive coordinator, even though they brought in Pete Carroll, do staff and all. He kept Patrick Graham. Patrick Graham, doing some digging on him, and what he's done in the past. He's had Blake Martinez for some really good years there. He had the 1 year Tay Crowder, if anybody remembers him on the Giants. His one relevant IDP year that was under Patrick Graham when Jerome Baker broke out on the Dolphins. That was Patrick Graham. See where I'm going with this? Like he's producing, you know, he's getting fantastic production here from no names, from nobody. So Landon Roberts, Devin White, we've seen them both be productive. One of these guys is going to shine, if not both. I took Devin White based on his speed and athleticism over Landon Roberts.
I agree. If I was picking between those two, I would go with White as well. Eventually, I think they're going to figure out that Roberts cannot play pass defense.
Yeah.
He is that 1 or 2 down run stuffer. White will be there for all 3 downs. I'm not worried about Tommy Eichenberg or any of these other undrafted free agent that they have in depth. And so as of now, based on that depth chart, though, I'm with you on Devin White. Now, I did want to be provocative to a certain degree because, once again, I like to get people thinking. And so Alexa just told me it's time for bed. I don't know why, but she just told me that. That was really weird, if you heard that in the background, folks. Okay, so with the Broncos, Dre Greenlaw, I'm just thrilled about him going into the 3-4 role and moving to the inside, and I just see him in the top 24. But the other name on this list is probably going to shock a lot of people. I actually had Alex Singleton at first, along with Dre Greenlaw. So similar to both Packers, I had both Broncos inside linebackers on this list. Then the more I got this thinking about Singleton, yeah, he's talking about how healthy he is, and he's back in shape, and he's ready to go, and just watch me, and all this kind of stuff. He's 32, coming off an ACL injury. And we talked about the wear and tear over the years these guys face, and this is coming off an ACL injury. And he's got a decent-sized contract. If there's a piece of me that just feels that Singleton is a cut risk if he's not healthy and he's not ready to start the year maybe as well as he thinks he is right now. And if Drew Sanders has a good training camp, because now they're committed to keeping him on the inside, I can see Singleton getting the heave-ho. Now, he might sign somewhere else. Maybe he ends up in Tennessee in that other spot. We'll see. But for now, I see Sanders and Greenlaw. That's one of the shockers. But remember, folks, I'm trying to speculate for 2025, not for 2024, 2023, but for 2025. And I could see Greenlaw and Sanders being your starting inside linebacker tandem for the Denver Broncos, and thus both in the top 24.
I can't bet against Alex Singleton. This guy's the most productive tackling machine I've ever seen. When he's on the field,
out of anybody,
man, if you look at how many tackles he
Mike
gets
Singletary, Dick Butkus,
how efficient he is with what is expected out of him. Yeah, Singleton's like, it's unreal what he's put up tackle wise. It's a good schedule for linebackers. Singleton seems to be healthy. He got hurt early in the season, should be ready to go. I think this will probably be one of the last years he's this high on the list for me, anyway.
So if I'm wrong and he's starting the year as a starter, you're in dynasty leagues, you're trying to trade him.
If he pops off to a great start, yeah, flip him. Because I just don't see the value sustaining much longer. Like I said, 32, ACL injury. He's going to be productive when he's on the field. It's just, but eventually he's going to drop off. Dre Greenlaw, it's injuries again, man. I've seen him flash and I've seen him fail with the injuries. He's never had a complete season. I think he has played 15 games twice. But outside of that, he's had 2 years where he missed a lot of time. So he is an injury risk for me. And Drew Sanders, I've seen him do nothing yet. So
what are you talking about? In one game, he played one play and got a sack, just right up the middle. Nobody blocked him.
Yeah. Yeah. Outside of that one sack where everybody forgot he was on the field, nothing. Yeah, I haven't seen him do anything, but to your point, he's in a great spot if they decide to actually play him. If one of these guys gets injured, then yeah.
Like him more than Justin Sternard, who's more of a special team kind of guy. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, he's had his shot. He's shown he can't stay healthy either. Actually, yeah, he's a special teamer, thumper. Not somebody you want starting. Sanders, if they can finally get him figured out and just turn him loose, we'll see this preseason. But he's somebody I would not draft, but I am definitely keeping my eye on the situation because of Greenlaw's injury history. Singleton, is he fully healthy or is he just saying he's healthy? His age, that's a guy you want on the top of your watch list. I would say Sanders.
Correct.
But yeah,
So
it's
one
a
more I
lot of
want to
mouths
talk.
to feed on Denver too. That's another thing I'm a little worried about.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but hopefully this was a provocative thought process for folks to think about there related to the Broncos linebackers. Last one that I'm a little bit worried about, and he wasn't one of the first ones I put on the list, and I didn't have him on the list to talk about, but I think I do want to talk about it with our audience here, Sean, is that's Foye Oluokun. Turning 30, his usage, we were really frustrated with how Ryan Nielsen, the defensive coordinator, used him last year in Jacksonville and did a
Yeah,
lot of rotation stuff. Plus, Oluokun missed a few games with injury, which he hadn't done in the past. Is he really going to jump back into that top 24? Let me rephrase that. How high do you think he's jumping back to the top 24? I have him on the lower side of the top 24 if he sneaks back in. It's only if he plays back to 100% of the snaps and all. But I do have some worries about him.
yeah. Those are viable concerns. They really are. I don't see him being the number one guy like he was there for 2, 3 years in a row. I see him. I see his ceiling being about 15 to 20. I think is where I put him. And he was not the first guy on my list either. In fact, I had Devin Lloyd there just because of the contract year. That was my biggest thing. I see him taking over. Uh, he's kind of a do everything guy. I think he's decent at rushing coverage and all that. I feel he's a more complete linebacker than some of these other guys. But yeah, Foye.
His
I think he turns
contract
it.
was through 2027.
I think
I
he
looked
turns
at.
it around. I do think he turns it around after that mess last year. I think he is the safer pick between him and Lloyd for sure. And somebody's going to have to get these tackles. Um, I just don't trust anybody else on that defense really. And nobody else scares me as hey they're going to eat into these tackles. The line isn't overly impressive. There's a lot of tackles to be had there, and I think Aluakun's still athletic enough to get to him because he is a converted safety or corner. I can't remember, but I believe he
Way
was a
back when. That
defensive
was a
back.
long time
Yeah,
ago. Yeah.
yeah. Don't get me counting years now. We're all going to get old if we start doing that. But yeah, I do like his chances to be in the top 24. I don't see him being that top 12 guy, that number one guy anymore. I think that's kind of sailed. It was fun while it lasted, but definitely could see him falling off this list.
Yeah.
There was somebody. Oh yeah, we already talked about John Campbell. I thought it was interesting. We both didn't add him to the list. I think going back to injury concerns and rotation concerns and all that.
Yep.
I was pleased to see we were both on that same page.
Yeah, it might look a little bit different in 2026, but for 2025, I think you and I are both aligned on he's not going to be the top 24. Agreed on
So
that.
one more I want to point out. I had Bobby Okereke jumping back on this list after being off of it last year. What was your reasoning for not putting him on the list?
When your defensive coordinator gets asked, wow, do you realize how many less tackles that Okereke has this year than last year? And he says something like, no, I didn't realize that. It kind of makes you wonder. It's like, doesn't instill a lot of confidence that I can't, but
Yeah,
my gut is just telling me that he was used very differently in that scheme last year than previous years. His defensive coordinator isn't necessarily, he's not the one that brought him in.
yeah.
Okereke is getting up there in age a little bit as well. Had some injuries this past year. I just don't think he cracks the top 24. He was another one of those I was debating along with the Jewel and Barton and so forth near the bottom. But the whole defensive coordinator, that thing in my head just said, "Oof." Uh, I just don't trust that he's going to be into the top 24.
I do believe it was a back injury too, which is tricky. We've seen careers get ruined over a back injury, which back, neck, something like that. It was one of those scarier ones, but not like
not JOKs.
Yeah, not JOK, not like Van Der Esch either. Another forgotten guy, but yeah, man, what a shame for JOK. It really grasped that. They finally turned him loose, gave him massive snaps, and just I hate to see his career look like it's over.
Yeah, it sure does look that way. Exactly. Real quick, before we move to the next section, then, Sean, just want to put a plug in for the fantasyfootballexpo.com is where you can find it. The Fantasy Football Expo, August 8th through 10th in Canton, Ohio. Encourage everybody to check it out and come and meet me and several other folks that'll be there. I booked my flight, my hotel, and got my tickets, and I'm all set to be there. So looking forward to meet so many of y'all up there. A lot of fun, from cornhole tournaments to poker tournaments to draft night out to watching some of the experts draft in the basement of the Hall of Fame itself, to get into having packages to try and get the opportunity to meet some of those folks that you hear about on the radio or on TV all the time. So I encourage you, come on out, check it out. It's a great environment. A lot of great people in the fantasy football community. All righty, Sean. So that concludes our linebackers. What do you say we give folks a preview of what the cornerbacks look like from last year and talk about next week's show a little bit? So pulling up here the top 24 cornerbacks from last year. And boy, there's some names that, boy, you almost want to gag when you see them. Think back to the airplane. I almost need that little bag thing that you throw up in on if you get air sick or something when you see some of the names on this list. But of the top 12 at cornerback, only 3 repeat on average based on this 10-year study. And of the top 24, only 8 repeat. So there'll be a lot of names coming off this list. 16 names Sean and I will each be taken off. Be interested to see how close we come to matching or not in terms of who comes off. And then more importantly, who will be coming on that you want to hear about that next week, particularly in those that are in cornerback required leagues. So we'll have some really good discussion about slot cornerbacks, maybe outside cornerbacks that aren't so good, that are getting targeted a lot, et cetera. So we'll have some good discussion on there.
We'll see how many rookies are actually on these lists each year to see if that rookie rule really does stick or not year to year.
Yep, that is one of those things that's out there. And so, Sean, you're going to do a little research and check that out for us, won't you?
I will. Some would say I may have already started it.
I'm not surprised. You are on top of things, my man. Well, look, one other thing, got to do a shout out for idpplus.com. If you haven't gone there, we have great tools, great articles, great rankings, great Discord channel where you get a lot of help from a lot of the people on the IDP staff. Hopefully you're seeing it from some of these shows, whether it be our IDP Plus Advice show or some of the others that we have, that there's a lot of talented, smart folks here to help you, not just with IDP, but there's a reason it's called IDP Plus, because they help with more than just IDP. They help with offense as well, not to mention betting as well. We made a lot of people money last year on the betting side of things. The people that are in the betting on the UFL with some of our stuff from YouTube channel, I understand, are doing really well as well, Sean. So great stuff at IDP Plus.
They just started out the CFL as well that just kicked off. So they're getting some bets out there, I think. Maybe. I could be wrong. But they could be coming. If I'm wrong, it might be on the way.
Canadian Football League, and I am French. So, all righty. So check out IDP Plus, sign up, get a subscription. You can even get a 1-month subscription if you want to try it out, if you don't believe me. All righty. As I mentioned, we're going to continue with cornerbacks next week. Following week, we'll do safeties, and we are IDP Plus Advice. So we are going to do the same thing for offensive positions. And if we have time next week, I might even pull up the offensive repeat rates if I have time to get it ready. We'll show that early in the show like we've been doing for all the other defensive positions. We'll look at what are repeat rates for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. We might introduce that to folks a little bit earlier before we get to the offense. Okay? Sean, any closing comments on our linebacker show today?
I don't have much at all to add. I am looking forward to getting into the offensive side of this later on as well. And special teams, kickers, punters, long snappers. Can't wait to get those guys.
If we do that show, which we won't, by the way,
we will not be doing that show.
We would not have many people watching that show or listening to that show.
We might be the only ones that have that information. Yeah. We don't know.
The Ferguson long snapper that's with Buffalo would be number one on the list because he's a former LSU guy. I think Miami let their Ferguson guy go, or maybe I have it backwards. All right. On that note, if you like this show, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube. If you have comments or questions or suggestions, please put it in the YouTube comments as well. So we'll take a look at those and we'll try and get back to all of you. I know one response on Chase Young, which I need to get back to from our Edge show. Give me a follow at Ricky Rod 66 and Sean at Sean 8386 as well. That's Sean 8386. Sorry about that. If you missed any previous shows, whether it be these or other shows, if you haven't done your rookie drafts yet for Dynasty, I did a 2-hour show that you definitely want to go and check out and listen to. It's a great show. Goes really deep on the rookies, both offense and IDP. So lots of great shows you can go back to. Okay. And with that, we'll see you in another week or so. On behalf of my partner in crime, Sean Teague, this is Ricky Roderick wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another, and we are out of here. Till next time.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.